Bruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis. 6 lines from the bottom at the 2 dots. The Gemara had previously discussed the reason why wine gets its separate bracha Borei Pri HaGofim. It first suggests that if the reason is indeed because the wine that comes out of the grapes is a higher elevation, thereby requiring a different bracha, so then the oil that comes from the olives should also be considered to be a higher elevation and then also require a different bracha. The Gemara concludes a different chiluk, that wine is different because wine is mesayed, wine is something that satiates, whereas the shemen, the oil of the olives, does not satiate. And therefore the bracha for olive oil is Borei Pri HaEitz. Says our Gemara Gufa, Omar Rav Yehuda Omar Shmuel, V'chein Amar Rabbi Yitzchok Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shemen Zayis Mevarchin Ala Borei Pri HaEitz. Hey Chidami, what are the circumstances? What are we talking about? That a person will make Borei Pri HaEitz on Shemen. If you want to say that he's drinking the Shemen Zayis, Azuke Mazikle, that's a mazik that'll danger him. The Tanya, Hashoise Shemen Shel Truma, Mishalim Mesaker, Veno Mishalim Mesachomesh. If a person accidentally ate or drank the oil of Truma, so then he pays only the Keren and not the Chomesh. Why? Because it's not Derech Achila, and therefore he only pays for the Hezek that he did to the Truma. Hasech Shemen Shel Truma, whereas if he takes the oil and he rubs it on his skin, which is the normal usage of the shemen, then he pays not only for the actual keren, for the damage, but also for the chomesh, because it's a normal usage of the shemen. So we see from here that when a person drinks the shemen, it's not considered to be derech achila. So why would you make a bracha Borei Pri HaEitz? Ela deka ochil le'ayidei pas. Rather, you must say that he's eating the shemen with pas, by putting shemen on top of the bread. Ask the Gemara, Hochi havya le pas iker v'hu tofel v'tnan ze haklal kol shu iker v'imoy tfela mevarich ale iker poiter as tfela. If this is the way that we're talking about, where he puts some oil on the bread and eats it that way, then the iker is going to be the bread, hamoitzi lechem min haaretz, and that will poiter the tofel of the shemen. Ela de koshasi le'aidei ingaron. Rather, he drinks the shemen with anigron. Anigron is a soup that is made out of cooked beets. The Omer Bar Shmuel, anigron maya de silka, anisgroin maya de kulu shalki. He says that anigron is the soup that is from the cooked beets, and ansigroin is the water that comes from cooked vegetables, another type of soup. In Cain asks the Gemara, Havale anigroin iker v'shemen tofil v'tnan zaklal kol shehu iker v'imo tfela mevarach ale iker upoites atfela. The same question: if you're going to put some shemen inside of this soup, this cooked beets soup, then the most what you're eating is the soup, and you have a little bit of shemen inside, whereby the iker is going to be the soup, and that will poiter the shemen that you're drinking as well, and therefore there's no bracha of Borei Pri HaEitz on the shemen. Says the Gemara, Hacha b'mayaskinon b'choishesh b'groinoi. We're talking about where a person has a sore throat, and therefore he puts then shemen, very much shemen, inside this soup. And therefore when he drinks the soup, and with a lot of the shemen, then it will require then the bracha of the iker, which is Borei Pri HaEitz. The Tanya hachoishesh b'groinoi lo ya'arenu b'shemen tchila b'Shabbos. If a person has a sore throat, the Mishnah, the Brisa says, he should not put the shemen inside of his mouth and let it sit on his throat, because then that'll be derech refuah, and since refuah on Shabbos is osir, rather what should he do? Aval noisin shemen harbe letoich anigroin ubolea. He should put a lot of shemen inside of this beet soup, and then he should then swallow it, causing his throat to be soothed that way. if that's the case, that we have a majority of shemen with a little bit of the soup, so then ask the Gemara Pshita, then it's Pashit, you'll say Broi Priya Eitz on this shemen. Mao desema, I might think to say, Kivan de lirefua kamechaven, lo livrich ale klal. I may think since he's doing for refuah purposes, therefore he doesn't make a bracha at all on the shemen. Kamash malan kivan de isle hana mine boy bruche. But because he does get hana from the shemen as well, then he does make a bracha boy pri ha'etz. Now the Gemara discusses when a person has kemach, does he make a bracha of borei priya eitz, or does he make a bracha of shahakol? Now it's not talking about the kemach, the flour that we are accustomed to. That flour is like avak, it's like dust. That everybody would agree would be shahakol. Here we're talking about when you have kemach, which is ground wheat, and it still has little pieces where it has the taste of the wheat. So now the Gemara asks, Kimcha dechiti, Rav Yehuda Amar Boi Priya Adamo, Rav Nachman Amar Shahakol Nihiyeh Bidvoroi. So Machloikis, Rav Yehuda says it's Boi Priya Adamo. Rav Nachman, he says that indeed it is a bracha of Shahakol Nihiyeh Bidvoroi. Omar le Rav Nachman lo tifloig ale de Rav Yehuda. Don't argue on Rav Yehuda who says Boi Priya Adamo. Why? The Rabbi Yochanan v'Shmuel kaimei kavasei, because Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel hold like him. The Omar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, v'chein Rabbi Yitzchok Amar Rabbi Yochanan, shemen zayis mevarchin alav borei pri ha'etz. Alma afagav dishtani b'milsei koi. That means that even though it still remains the shemen zayis, but because you're going to make a borei priya eitz, then you make a borei priya eitz on the shemen that comes out of the zayis, since it's ishtani and the milsa is koi, it still remains what it is. Halchanami, so too over here when it comes to the wheat that is grounded. After the ishtani, it's true that it changes, but still b'milsa koi, it still retains its same bracha and remaining as borei pri ha'etz. On this case of the chitim, rather, borei priya adama. Ask the Gemara, midami. There's no comparison. Hasam over there by the zayis. Lesle iluya acharina. When you take out the oil from the zayis, there's no greater way to use the oil. And therefore, it retains the same property as the oil, and it's still considered to be derech achila, the bracha of borei priya eitz. But hacha isle iluya acharina. But over here, when you ground the chitim into flour, so that still has a greater iluya. It has a greater purpose, and that is bepas, to make it into bread. And therefore, it loses that greatness. It doesn't have the derech achila as it normally would, and therefore the bracha would be a lower bracha of borei priya adama. V'chi isle iluya acharina. Ask the Gemara, lo mevarchina ale borei priya adama el shahakol. Is that so? That you should only say shahakol, not borei priya adama? V'arav Zeira, Rav Masna, Amar Shmuel, akro chaya, on a raw pumpkin, v'kimcha de sa'are, mevarchin ale shahakol nihiyeh bidvoro, and kemach of barley, you would make a bracha of borei priha. You would make a bracha, of shahakol nihiyeh bidvoro. My lab dechita borei priya adama. If this is the case when it comes to the grounded barley, which is shahakol, then chitim, which is a greater type of tevua, therefore would require a bigger bracha of borei priha adama. Says the Gemara, lo dechiti nami shahakol nihiyeh bidvoro. The wheat is also the same bracha as shahakol nihiyeh bidvoro as the barley. Then why don't you teach wheat, and then I'll know barley. If wheat gets the bracha of shahakol nihiyeh bidvoro, and wheat is it's a higher level of grain, and still that's its bracha of shahakol, then certainly when it comes to the barley, it would be also shahakol. Says the Gemara, if I taught chiti, hava mina hani mini de chiti, abo de sa'ari loy livrich ale klal. If I taught chitim, I would say chitim gets shahakol, but barley wouldn't get anything at all. Kamash malon, it still gets. Ask the Gemara, why would I think that? Umigora mimelach v'zomis? Is it less than salt and brine, which gets the bracha shahakol niya bidvoro desnan? Al hamelech val hazomis oime shahakol niya bidvoroi? Says the Gemara, Itztrich. No, I still need to teach this. Kasal kedai dechamino melach v'zomis avid inish deshadi lipumei. When it comes to salt and brine, a person puts that in his mouth. In other words, he eats it. Aval kimcha desare, when it comes to the barley which is ground up, hoyo v'kosher l'kukani, since it causes worms to be found in to develop in a person's intestines, lo livrich ale klal, a person would not make a bracha on that at all. Kamash malan, we're coming to teach otherwise, that he does make a bracha of shahako. Why? Kivan di isle hano mine boy beruchi, because he does get benefit, he does get an enjoyment when he eats the grounded sa'arim. Therefore, he will make a bracha of shahako niya bidvoroi. Says the Gemara, Kairei. Kairei is they call it palm shoots. So palm shoots, it's in the beginning, the first year of the growth from the palm tree is soft and edible. All of the subsequent years, it turns to the bark, it turns to a very hard piece of tree, and therefore it's inedible. So there's a machlok is, what about the the first year of the palm shoots, the Kairei? Rav Yehuda Omer Bore Pri Ha'adamo Ushmul Omar Shahakol Niya Bidvor Machlokes Rav Yehuda and Shmuel. Rav Yehuda Omar Bore Pri Ha'adamo, because Perehu, because it's a fruit, it's edible, comes off the tree, and therefore gets the designation of Bore Pri Ha'adamo. Ushmul Omar Shahakol Niya Bidvoroi Hoyo V'Soifo Lahakshos. It might be soft now, but since at the end, beyond this year, it will become hardened, just like the tree itself. Therefore, the only bracha you make on it would be shehakol niya bidvoro. Omar le Shmuel Rav Yehuda, shinno kavosech mistabro. Now, Shmuel, who holds that the bracha is shehakol, he turns to Rav Yehuda, his Talmud, and he says, sharp one. He says, it's mistaber like you. The sages have no ego. They're not looking for personal interests, ulterior motives. They're looking for the emes. And therefore, Shmuel turns to Rav Yehuda and he says, it's mistaber like you are saying that should be borei pri adomo. Why? The snoin, when it comes to radishes, soifo lahakshois, at the end they also become hardened. And yet the bracha on radishes is borei pri adomo. Says the Gemara velohi. The Gemara rejects what Shmuel just had said and makes the following chiluk. Tznoin notai inchi adaita de pugla. When a person plants the tznoin, then his purpose, his intention is for that radish. Dikla lo noti inish adaita de kare. When a person plants the date tree, his intention is not for the palm shoots. And therefore, as long as a person doesn't plant something for its purpose, therefore he will not make a bracha, in this case, of Bari Pri Adama. And when it says over here, Lo Mevarchin Alei Klal, doesn't mean not make a bracha at all, it means not to make the bracha of Ha'adama, rather, Shehakol Niya Bidvoroi. Ask the Gemara, V'harei Tzlaf, Denote Inchi Adaite de Pircha. We have something called a tzlach. It's like a caper bush. For that, we say when a person plants it for the purpose of its berries, then this nan, it says, Al mine nitzpo, ala alin, valatmoros, on the leaves and also on the dates, date-like growths from this tree, oimer bre pri adama, val ha'evyoinois, val kafrisin, on the berries and on the husks, oimer bre pri eitz. So we see from here that indeed he'll make a bari pri adama on the alin and on the tmoros. Says the Gemara, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak tzlaf noti inshi adaita de shusa. That's because a person does plant it for the purpose of its shoots, for its shusa, which is the shoots that come out from it. Dikla, however, lo noti inshi adaita de kaira. But when it comes to the dekel tree, the palm tree, a person doesn't plant it for the purpose of the kara, for the palm shoots, because that will then diminish the tree. Even though we saw that Shmuel praised Rav Yehuda and said, indeed, it's mistaber like you, the bracha should be bari priha adama on the kare, on the palm shoots. Hilchasa kavasi de Shmuel, the halacha is like Shmuel, that the bracha is bari, is shehakol niyeh bidvaroi. Says the Gemara, bringing back the tzlaf. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Rav, tzlaf shel orla b'chutz la'aretz. The tzlaf that we brought before, which is this caper bush, it says in regards to orla, in chutz la'aretz, zorek es ha'evyonos v'oichel es ha'kafrisin. Throw away the berries and then eat the clasps, the husps rather, the coverings. Lememro, does that mean to say the evyonos peri v'kafrisin la peri? Does that mean to say that the evyonos are considered to be the fruit, but the husks that cover it are not the fruits? And therefore, when it comes to orla, we say throw away the fruits, the evyonos, but you can eat the kafrisin because orla is only applicable to the fruits. Raminu asked the Gemara, almine nitzba, which we quoted before as well. There's different parts of this caper bush. Ala alim v'ala tmoros, on the leaves and on the date-like growths. Oimer b'ay pri adama v'ala evyonos, and on the berries v'ala kafris, and on the husks. Oimer b'ay pri eitz. So you see that even on the kafrisin, even on these husks that are covering the fruit, they also have the designation of b'ay pri eitz. So why, when it comes to orla, do we say you can eat them in chutz la'aretz? Hu do amar Rabbi Akiva. That's because he holds like Rabbi Akiva, says the Gemara. Disnan. Rabbi Eliezer oimer tzlaf misaser tmarois ve'evyonos ve'kafrisin. Rabbi Eliezer says when it comes to slaf, this caper bush, so you take meiser from the tmarois, the evyonos, and the kafrisin. Rabbi Akiva oimer ein misaser ele evyonos bilvad. Only the evyonos, because they are the fruit. Mibnei shehu pri. V'neima halacha Rabbi Akiva. So once you say that that's indeed the halacha, that you can eat the orla, meaning to say in chutz la'aretz you can eat the kafrisin, because he goes like Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva holds that it's not considered the fruit, then why don't you say the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva? Iomar halacha Rabbi Akiva. Because if you want to say the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, hava mina filu ba'aretz, I might think the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. You can do so also in Eretz Yisrael. Komash malan, kol hamekil ba'aretz, halacha kamoise bechutz la'aretz. Aval ba'aretz loy. That which we're mekil in Eretz Yisrael, we're able to do so in chutz la'aretz, but not in Eretz Yisrael itself. And therefore, it would be inappropriate to say the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, will make a mistake. Says the Gemara, so then qualify it and say the following: V'neima halacha Rabbi Akiva b'chutz la'aretz, and then we won't make that mistake. Says the Gemara, the kol hamekel ba'aretz halacha moise b'chutz la'aretz. So why don't you say the same thing? Say the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva and chutz la'aretz, because kol hamekel ba'aretz halacha moise b'chutz la'aretz, and we won't make the mistake that in Eretz Yisrael it's also true. Yomar hochi, because if I said this, then hava amino hani mili gabe meiser ilon. That's in regards to Meiser Ilon, which is only Dirabanan. The Ba'aretz Gufa Midirabanan. Aval Gabe Orla, the Ba'aretz Midiraisa, Ema B'chutz la'aretz Nami Nigzar. I might think to say that in chutz la'aretz also will be Machmir. To then also be careful in the Orla in chutz la'aretz and make the same Gzeira and say you can't eat that either. Kamash Malan. We say that you can eat the kafrisin in chutz la'aretz even though it's orla.